I didn't really know what to expect. There were a number of taverns where nothing happened, and I was incredibly bored. From here on out, I will say I do not care if they end up together, because I hate it. Thanks, but I hate it. Hey guys! So, I'm coming in with a little review. I finally read the first book of The Wheel of Time, aka Eye of the World, and I wanted to get on here and do a mini review, and I'm going to put the book up here in this space. But I read it, and I'm going to be coming at this as a newbie, so to speak, because while I read fantasy, I only really read fantasy romance because I like romance. Romance is my primary category and fantasy is secondary. So for this book, this is going to be spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled, then you can exit this video. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I'm going to rate this according to characters, plot, and world building. I didn't really know what to expect. I will say that it started off really slow. Robert Jordan kind of lets you get into the headspace of the main characters, the main kids. It was interesting really going through their daily lives for a little bit before the action started happening, and you realize that these kids are special and they need to go train. And so the juxtaposition between the kids and then the 3 or 4 adults that are accompanying them and kind of that banter is pretty fun. I liked it a lot when the characters, because they had a big band of characters at the beginning, at the start of the journey, to see them all just get split up and to see different characters interact that I wasn't expecting to. So I really liked the banter between Lan and Moraine and the Wisdom. I thought their interactions between the 3 of them were really interesting and kind of raised my eyebrow a little bit, because I realized that there was a lot of, I feel like there was some undercurrents there between those 3 characters specifically, and I didn't get to like really understand what that was till the end. So we're gonna put a pin in that and we're gonna come back to that. I did not like the insta-love between Rand and Egwene. Yeah, I kind of hated it. I don't think it can be classified as insta-love because they grew up together, so they know each other. And the concept of insta-love is 2 people that have never met falling in love immediately at first sight. Very angsty in the way that 2 teenagers are when they don't know what romance and love is, and they're trying to figure it out, and they're just messing it up every page. Because no matter what now, because I had such a horrible time reading about 2 teenagers and their like comedy of errors or whatever, like between, you know, him freaking out about her talking to boys and then her freaking out about him talking to girls, and just this constant miscommunication. Like, from here on out, I will say I do not care if they end up together, because I hate it. Thanks, but I hate it. Like, I don't think I've hated a couple this much. And I don't even know what started it. As far as Rand, Perrin, and Mat go, they were very much a blank slate from the beginning. And I felt like that was good because it allows them to build their personalities. But that was also bad because for me as a reader, I had trouble differentiating them, except for the description that Perrin was more stocky, so I imagine he's just a little bit more muscular because he's a blacksmith. But outside of that, like, let's say Mat and Rand seemed very similar. And it isn't until they get their weapons that you start to see key differences when it comes to fighting styles and that type of thing. So Perrin has his axe, Rand has his sword, and Mat gets his knife later on. And I felt like the 3 of them kind of created a interesting look into different types of men in this world, because Perrin had all the good luck on the journey. He is a blacksmith's apprentice, so he already knows how to fight, and he got his wolf powers very early on in the book, around the middle or so. So he kind of had pretty good luck. Matt, on the other hand, he did not have good luck. He ended up with the cursed knife, which you find out near the end of the book that it's cursed, and that's what's getting Rand and him found during the tavern scene. But I'm not sure what he does in the village, but he has no background in fighting, so it kind of hurts him as well. So Matt is your average everyday person who has no skill in fighting, who has no idea how to survive in the wild. And so Rand, however, is in the middle, and he has both good and bad things happen to him over the course of the journey. The good thing is, you know, he had his dad's sword, and he's learned how to use it and to run and escape at the very beginning of the book when he's running with his dad back to the village from their house. But he gets a little bit of training in on how to hide, how to fight, blah blah blah. So he's not so bad off, but he is bad off in that he is the chosen one. So the Dark Lord is constantly chasing him, and that is the big negative on this journey. So you have Perrin as a good luck charm, Matt as a bad luck charm, and then you have Rand in the middle as a sort of neutral. I really liked Perrin in the beginning because he had a little bit more character to him, being a blacksmith and being quiet and well-mannered. I will say that his personality stood out the most among the three boys, and I really enjoyed his relationship with Egwene while they were with the traveling nomads. I felt like he kept her very grounded in a friendly way, because he knows that Rand likes her, so he was never going to make a move on her or anything. So it kind of gives Egwene a male character that she can talk to where she feels safe. As far as Egwene, Elaine, and the Wisdom, God, I cannot remember her name to save my life. The Wisdom has a name, I just don't remember what it is. Between the three girls, I felt like Jordan did a really good job at differentiating the three. I felt like their temperaments were so different that I never got to a point where I was confused about who was speaking. As far as their backstories, I feel like of the three girls, the Wisdom's was infinitely more interesting. Specifically when she goes and cuts the line of the enemy's horses. And she was doing it like just enough so that when they gave the signal, the horses would startle and they would all break free and run. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, what do you do with a skill like that? Like, where do you learn that? So from that point on, and then with Lan teasing her somewhat, I'm like, oh, this character's really interesting. Like, I liked how they paired Lan with the Wisdom, aka Nineveh, because in the book it seemed like when we were in her point of view and she was talking about how she became a Wisdom, it seems like the power was always there for her, but she lacked focus. And so to have a very stern mentor in the form of a man, specifically with the cutting the horse line scene, she knows how to use the power, but she doesn't know how to fine-tune it yet. So Lan is kind of pushing her in that direction because I feel like the line cutting was kind of difficult. The end, where you figure out that Lan is a forgotten king in a sense, and the fact that he's also special for reasons that have nothing to do with magic, was really refreshing. I will say that I was surprised because I was picking up undercurrents of kind of a romantic tension between Lan and the Wisdom, which was interesting to me because I'm like, oh, we're doing a May-December romance here, I see. Because I'm pretty sure they said Lan and Moraine are like in their 30s and the Wisdom is not even 20. And like, it's a 10-year age gap, and it just kind of came out of nowhere because then I finally get to the page where they are talking about, you know, her wanting to marry him and all this stuff, and I'm just like, what? Like, it literally caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that type of romance in this book, which I'll be happy if it happens, because I like things that are just, different. I mean, it's probably not going anywhere between Lan and the Wisdom, but it was refreshing, I will say that. And I want to say I really hated Egwene, and I think I hated her because of her interactions with Rand and how that constantly affected her personality. Like, she was constantly so worried about, being the perfect image of what he thinks a woman should be. And I also found it interesting how they paired up Moraine with Egwene, because I feel like Moraine is a very progressive type of feminine, like, she is a woman and she is beautiful, but like, she's also a warrior. So like Lan, she also has to travel and has to be a little unladylike. So it's showing Egwene a new version of what femininity is, because I feel like in her town, a lot of the women are housewives because it's a small town. Like, nobody travels, nobody's a fighter in that town, as far as I can tell. She has no reason to have to know how to travel and be a slightly different version of feminine. I feel like the Wisdom was more mature and that she doesn't particularly care about what everybody else thinks of her, and I think that inability to really own herself and her actions, it really made Egwene an obnoxious character. And I get it, she's still a young character, she still has room to grow, but I would have felt like near the end of the book, some of the characters would have got, more confident and more sure of themselves. A little more willing to assume the mantle of hero. But I feel like Matt and Egwene specifically are lagging behind. With Egwene, I found it a little annoying, but maybe that was like in opposition to how she was interacting with Rand and his very traditional ideas of what a woman should be is very prevalent throughout the book, because I feel like she butts heads with him because she doesn't want to just be a wife. She wants to have a legacy and go out traveling. Elaine. I don't have much to say about Elaine because as a character, we don't learn a whole lot about her. She comes in kind of later, and so we don't get to be in her head like we do with the Wisdom and Egwene. So all we know about Elaine is she's a queen's daughter, so she's next in line to the throne, and her mother and her Aes Sedai counselor have a hard time reining her in because she just wants to go around healing people and doing whatever she wants to do. Your typical story about the children of royalty and how they just don't want to conform to that very straight-laced type of life in order to rule. And it'll be interesting to see if she becomes the queen, if she becomes an Aes Sedai queen, which, I mean, I feel like they're finally bringing that up in book 2. I'm interested to see if that happens. Or, the third option is her denouncing the throne and just becoming a regular Aes Sedai. I really don't have much to say about her yet. Like, I'm just getting a feel for her. She seems like a blend of the Wisdom and Egwene, in a sense. Only royal. So we'll see what happens with that. Okay, so as far as plot, I discussed that a little bit ago. I felt like it was good, but the middle needed to be chopped out. So I will put that here. If there was a con to this book, I will say it was the middle. Because specifically, when Rand and Matt get separated from the group after the Gleeman dies, and it's just the two of them, two kids kind of running away. They spent a lot of time going to taverns, and I don't know, I didn't really count, but I feel like they went to maybe 4 or 5 different taverns on the course of their journey to get back to the rest of the group, struggling, trying to run when they're so tired and hungry because they have no money. They did meet a few villains while they were going to these taverns, which is kind of where the chase came from. But, like, I didn't feel like that was an important enough point in the journey to fixate on as long as he did. Because there were a number of taverns where nothing happened, and I was incredibly bored. And the one thing the middle succeeds in doing is it's so long. that you feel how long it is. Specifically with that section with the taverns that Matt and Rand visited. I literally felt every single ounce of time that they spent traveling to each one. They spent a lot of time on that aspect of the journey, but I don't feel like that was the most interesting or the most important, quite honestly. And I do realize, now that I've started book 2, that like maybe some breadcrumbs were left, and maybe that was why, and I just missed it all. I feel like it was too many, in the sense that Robert Jordan could have condensed like the 5 taverns into maybe 3, 2 with really big high points and important plot points, and 1 that was just boring where nothing happens. In book 2 so far, they're finally expanding it and getting into some other POVs, which is good. We'll see how that works out, because POVs are not my thing. They are not my thing at all. I always find that there's always characters that I love and characters that I hate. So hopefully that won't become the case in the Wheel of Time series. So far it's not. I haven't really found a point of view that I truly despise. But who knows? I guess we'll see what happens with that. For world building. That's what I was going to say. World building. I felt like his world building was it's just kind of your everyday medieval world. I don't feel like the world itself was all that special. The magic system is a lot more interesting, and I'm waiting for them to kind of open up a little bit more about that. My favorite part of the book was the gate hopping. I thought that part was interesting, where they go into the farmer's cellar and like basically use his mirror to travel, because for whatever reason he has a traveling mirror in his cellar. So I thought that part was fun, just the journey within the mirrors and what that was like. It's also corrupted with the darkness, and the dark also lives there, and it just gives it an element of fear that you're inside of a horror movie and can't get out, especially when it got down to the part where a villain had followed them and they were being chased, and the world between mirrors is kind of like limbo, and you can get stuck there. So I thought that added an interesting element of actual stakes, I guess is the point, because I'm like, what happens if like people get lost and they're in another time period or whatever, because I equate mirrors to time travel, so I'm sure there's going to be some timey-wimey stuff in here somewhere. And I want some training, I'm going to say training montages, like I'm watching a movie, but I want some training sections where they're actually doing stuff, and I can learn a little bit more about the magic system and how that works, because we get a fair bit about the Aes Sedai and how the magic works with them and their backstory, but I really think there's some other elements that weren't explored, specifically the Gleeman. I felt like he had some power there, some magical, mystical ability that wasn't explored, because I think we were only in his POV maybe 1 or 2 chapters. So I feel like there's some other magical elements, like the Blight, and how that land is like a dead land, but it's almost like the forests are inhabited by like personifications of evil, and it's interesting, but it's stuff that they didn't really touch on. Like obviously the Aes Sedai were a main focus and what they do, because that's going to like connect with Rand and what his like future could potentially be. Same with the Wisdom and Egwene, but yeah, I think there's a lot more about the world building that still needs to be explored. This is only book 1. They've only really like been on a journey, and that's all we've seen. But yeah, for the world building, it was fine. Nothing too much outside of medieval times, which is fine. Nothing spectacular. I started reading Truth Witch about a year or so ago, that series, and that's been the best so far for me in terms of like the magic system world building. But we can't all live up to that standard, so we'll see in the subsequent books what the world building really looks like and what the magic systems really look like. Cause like there's some specific magic that Perrin has with the wolves, but again, it has not been explained. But he is now connected to them. So, long-term predictions. My greatest prediction is that I feel like this series is going to be cyclical, as the Wheel of Time kind of explains, and I have a feeling that all the characters are going to die, and the reincarnation cycle is going to begin again at the end of the series. That is my main theory. Specifically, that a lot of the characters that they met along the way are previous reincarnations of themselves, like with Perrin meeting the guy with the wolves and how weird and creepy he was, and I'm like, oh, like, is that what Perrin's gonna become? Same with the Glee Man and some of the other characters. They're so prominent and so interesting that I'm like, I can't believe they're only in this first book and then they just kind of like all disappear. I'm wondering if this is a cycle, and Rand and the kids meeting these adults are really like meeting future versions of themselves in a sense. So I'm wondering if the series is going to circle right back around in the loop. I'm going to assume that Rand and Egwene are going to get together at some point. I'm pretty sure that's going to happen because it's the most obvious thing that could happen. I'm hoping that they don't stay together because I don't like them as a couple. They annoy me as a couple. What else? Oh, and then my final theory is that the wisdom, Nineveh, see, finally got her name, Nineveh, is going to throw a wedge between Lan and Moraine. Because of her completely random interest in Lan the minute they said he was a forgotten prince. I'm like, oh shit. And I'm like, is she interested in him because she finds him attractive, or is she interested in him because she's scheming a scheme, like making herself important by potentially, accidentally getting pregnant or something, what side of the coin is this like love affair going to fall on? I'm gonna hope it's like the slow burn kind of thing that maybe really potentially impacts the story at the end. I can't see someone throwing 2 different romances in book 1 already, just off the top, and have it not amount to anything. Those are my main theories. Yeah, but we'll see what book 2 holds. I would suggest, if you're a newbie to fantasy, to go ahead and read it. It's pretty tame. It's not going to be something that's going to make you slam the book down and refuse to read ever again. So I think it's a good starting point. And you can tell that it's Robert Jordan's first book because, like I said, the whole middle section could have been condensed. Other than that, I will give this book this is a 3 out of 5. Really, really good for what it is. It kept my interest. It still kept my interest with enough little nuggets to keep you going. It gives the author room to grow in a way that I'm pretty sure the series is going to grow, because it's like a ridiculous number of books for me to read. I know some people would consider that pretty low, but I think that's fine for the first book in a series. Like, they've hooked me with some of the elements of what's going on. So I am in the middle of reading book 2, just kind of started that. 3 out of 5 is solid. So yeah, I think everybody should read it. Time will tell what I think about the rest of the series, but I'm going to try and read them because I've been meaning to get into some older fantasy anyway. Specifically Brandon Sanderson. Definitely check this out and stay tuned for whenever it is I finish the rest of the books in the series. It might be forever because we'll see how this works with his writing style. And I mean, it's not the syrupy thickness of Tolkien, but it's also not like the syrup light of Brandon Sanderson. So I think I'll be fine. Yeah, and with that, thank you.